Let us begin with prayer. God of hope, we pray for understanding. We pray for direction. How can we avoid despair when your prophets predict gloom? How can we carry on when so much about the world is so wrong? Enliven us, Lord. Help us persevere and find our way forward with trust in you, a determination to try, and a willingness to reach out to others when we are overcome. Now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and our Redeemer. Amen. If you saw the film Selma that was released last year about the civil rights and freedom marches led by Martin Luther King Jr. in the early 1960s, you will recall how the movie opened with 4 young girls in their Sunday best, dresses starched and clean, chatting together as they walk down a circular stairway. They are at church, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. They have bows in their hair, bright smiles on their faces, and beautiful brown skin. They are on their way downstairs to the vestry to robe for choir. It is 10:22 in the morning. Suddenly, an explosion. The force of it tears the back wall off the church. It blows a passing motorist out of his car. The girls are thrown through the air like rag dolls. They die instantly, killed by 15 sticks of dynamite set to explode as the black congregation gathered for worship. Children killed at church. It was 1963. It was Alabama. It was the Klan, white supremacist terrorists feeding off fear and hate of black people. But even for that tortured place and time, the killing of children in their choir robes crossed the line. It awoke the anger of the nation. It raised a rallying cry to action that would change the future of Black America forever and for the better. It was time to stop the madness. When Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. heard the news, it galvanized him. The horror of the murders moved him from church preacher to prophetic leader of an entire people, of our entire nation, fighting the racism and intolerance of the Jim Crow South. This past Thursday, September 15th, marked the 53rd anniversary of the slaughter of those innocent girls. Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Carol Denise McNair. Reverend King gave the eulogy at their funeral. He proclaimed them heroines who died for freedom and human dignity. Significantly, he argued that we must not focus on who murdered them, but rather focus on the system, the way of life that produced the murderers. In spite of the darkness of this hour, he preached, we must not despair. We must not lose faith. Never forget that God is able to lift you from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope and transform dark and desolate valleys into sunlit paths of inner peace. There is a balm in Gilead. There is a physician there, the buoyancy of hope. The balm that Jeremiah sought with bitter tears but could not find. Hope is the salve that can soothe our frayed nerves and restore us. Is there no balm in Gilead? No medicine for us from God? No cure for our hateful ways, our self-absorbed protestations, our worship of idols, money, people, or revisionist, whitewashed recollections of an all was once so perfect past? Go to Gilead, the region along the Jordan River, northeast of Jerusalem. It is abundant with trees producing resin enough for healing balms and medicines of every sort. Of course there is a balm in Gilead. We mustn't forget it. The healing balm that God provides. The healing balm of hope. The long-hoped-for opening of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture will occur next Saturday in Washington, D.C. The museum was authorized by Congress 13 years ago, a 400,000 square foot building on 5 acres of land close to the Washington Monument. President Obama, our nation's first black president, will fittingly speak at the opening dedication. If you look online, you can see a video of the new building. You will see how beautiful it is. A museum meant to tell a shared story. The building's exterior is layered with carved bronze panels protruding upward and outward with steel inner supports, like hands reaching out in prayer. The panels seem to float, and when seen from below, elicit the look and feel of tree branches pierced by dappled light. And from the video clip of the new structure, you can almost see the breeze flow across it, the afternoon light permeate it, and feel a beckoning invitation to enter. Inside, there is a collection of over 400,000 artifacts that grew from nothing more than an idea. The curators went across America to collect the museum collection. They asked for artifacts from individuals, for lost and found objects, for the story to be told. The finds were extraordinary. The opening show will present 3,500 pieces, including grim reminders of the dark history of slavery, shackles, whips, and clan hoods, and heartbreaking items like the muslin pillowcase given by a woman named Rose, a slave, as a farewell gift to her 9-year-old daughter, Ashley, who was being sold away to a plantation further south. There are exhibits about the abolitionist movement, with Nat Turner's Bible on display. There are 20th century exhibits spanning from segregation to civil freedoms. There is celebration with clips of artists and cinema stars and athletes like Carl Lewis and Muhammad Ali. The 21st century exhibit is a work in progress, a Trayvon Martin protest sign, a Hurricane Katrina door remnant, and artifacts that remind us of the work to resolve racial tensions that still lies ahead. We need unity and understanding, conversation and solidarity to move forward to ensure a stable, peaceful life among all races, and we need to think. Recent protests against racism, staged by professional athletes who act out by sitting down or kneeling on one knee in protest during pre-game national anthems, are not coherent with the message of a hope-filled reconciliation. For me personally, standing tall with your hand over your heart is the appropriate pose to take when the national anthem is played. And even though the U.S. Constitution separates church and state, we Presbyterians have agreed in our church constitution to support our nation and our civil authorities because we live as civic neighbors in communities. We will and do engage in civil disobedience when such actions make a difference, when injustice is so great it's worth going to jail for. But when it comes to respectful behavior around the nation's flag, the Presbyterian Church would encourage that of us. We stand proud with our flag not because of a nationalistic sense of triumphalism or American arrogance, or in secret support of anti-black rhetoric hidden in song verses long since jettisoned by their author, like anyone's ill-advised first draft. Instead, we stand up in honoring our flag when the anthem is sung to pay respect to the memory of the lives given up by the American servicemen and women of every race and faith, so that today we might continue to enjoy our rights and freedoms, the freedoms they fought and died for. The right to protest and speak our minds freely and openly are among the most treasured freedoms our flag represents. Professional athletes like 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who began the kneel instead of stand at the national anthem movement, have made calculated choices about how to express their protest against racism. These players also have money in the spotlight. For example, Mr. Kaepernick has a guaranteed base salary with the 49ers for 2016 of $11.9 million, guaranteed. The irony is that while he protests racism in America by taking a knee before the flag during the national anthem, that very flag is what gives him the right, the liberty, and the freedom to do just that. Our professional athletes can do great things to help ease racial tensions, participating in neighborhood conversations with community police, coaching youth athletic leagues, lobbying for legislative change. They can be role models in how to change the system from within, rather than attacking the symbol of America as if America was the problem. We Americans create our own problems, but fortunately our nation and the flag for which it stands guarantees us civil procedures that allow us to resolve those problems peaceably and democratically. With that said, this morning I want to urge our high school athletes to think hard about how to best raise your voices and show your concerns about racism. Protest is good, but not all protests are created equal. Remember that if you attack the flag, your actions have consequences. And I want to suggest to you that you can still be in solidarity with black and brown people without jeopardizing your allegiance to your nation. In other words, I encourage you to find a form of protest and a course of action that attacks racism and not America. You need America and all its creativity, freedom, protections, and big-hearted people in order to end racism. Taking a knee at a flag-raising ceremony doesn't tell us how you feel about racism, but it certainly suggests something very negative about the way you see America. Friends, I invite you to talk to your neighbors here in our church, in the Indonesian Fellowship. Next week in worship, you will see 25 new members joining us with Indonesian backgrounds. Ask them how hard they work to get to America, to escape oppression, to escape violence, to experience religious freedom, to have a better way of life, to have a house and a car and a job, to become U.S. citizens, the dream of a lifetime. Don't take that U.S. passport or that American flag or our national anthem for granted before you are old enough to know how much they mean, to know what a blessing you have received. I worry about you. I know I'm your minister and not your mom, but remember this. Everything we do gets filmed and uploaded to internet today. In a brief 5-minute internet search this week, I saw videos of high school athletes, most of them white, from Damascus, Maryland to Lincoln, Nebraska and beyond, protesting the flag during the pregame anthems. Students quietly kneeling, but with no wording to connect their actions to their concerns about racism. From every smartphone, instant uploads. My point is this. A flag protest may have been a good conversation starter from a multi-millionaire, but don't jeopardize your future by copying a sports star without thinking about the consequences for your lives. Is the American flag the problem, or is it racism? If you have ever wanted to serve in the military, or serve the local police force, or receive a sports scholarship, or a road scholarship, or apply for any job, be aware of how you might look to an outsider, out of context, in a social media post, of you taking whatever protest pose you may choose. You are free to do that. The flag reminds us of that. But is that how you want to be remembered? Is that the best way for you to fight to end racism? Is your protest effective in a way that can change laws and protect your neighbors? Or are you merely a copycat? Black lives do indeed matter, as all lives matter. But instead of protesting the flag, we would be better to embrace it. The nation's flag flown in the public arena symbolizes our collective freedom and our surprising unity despite our nation's growing diversity. This morning I urge our young people to protest injustice, but to do it wisely. We need to think about our actions and be effective with our words. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. recognized that justice for the black and brown people of our nation depends very much on the proper working of our democracy. He spoke up for what was right and spoke out about what was wrong. He led peaceful demonstrations for civil rights, voting rights, and social justice, and he did this with an unwavering commitment to nonviolence and Christian values. Reverend King sang the national anthem and said the Pledge of Allegiance as part of the published program at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963. He spoke from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial on the National Mall, standing in front of 250,000 Americans. He did not kneel or turn away from the flag in protest. He stood up under it and he spoke out. It was there in his I Have a Dream speech, in his speech about hope, that Dr. King showed us how to be wise with our actions and effective with words. He was as wise as the prophets when he dreamed out loud of the day when his 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He spoke of the day when black and white children will take hands as brother and sister. He was effective with his words when he said, "This is our hope. With faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day, that this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, 'My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.'" Martin Luther King Jr., a black man, a civil rights leader, he did not sit down and protest at the national anthem. He embraced it, he sang it, because he knew that there, with everyone at attention, one nation, indivisible, under God, is where hope can be found, the hope for freedom the hope for justice, the hope for a better day, the balm of Gilead, hope that the promised future will one day be ours.